This video is going to show you how to do the human or object in motion part of the shutter speed assignment. So the first thing you want to do is on your camera, if you're using a Canon camera, make sure that the shooting mode dial is set to TV, which is time value, which allows you to set the shutter speed. If you are on a Nikon camera, you would just set it to S, which is for shutter. So once you have that set, now you can actually dial in your shutter speed settings. So for this part of the assignment, it asks you to take 3 separate photos. One shot at 1/15, another one shot at 1/200, and then the third one shot at 1/1000. It's going to be helpful if you're photographing the same object or the same human doing the same thing 3 separate times. Now don't be upset if you don't get it the first time. It's going to take multiple times to get the lighting and the framing right. So what I am going to do first is I'm going to start on the 1/15 setting. So I am going to adjust my shutter speed so that way it says 1/15. Once it's at 1/15, probably what you're going to have to do is set in a lower ISO number. 1/15 is letting in a lot of light. So for my ISO, I will do something like ISO of 100. And then you're going to have to take a test shot. Okay, so it doesn't even matter if it's in focus, you just need to take a test shot. Okay, so in my lighting setup that I have here, 100 is a little bit low, so I am going to move that ISO up to 200, and I'm going to take another test shot. And that one looks pretty good. So that's what you'll have to do. Before you're even photographing anything or anyone in motion, take test shots. So that way you at least get your exposure right before you worry about framing. Okay, so now that you have your settings dialed in for the first photo, now you are ready to get your subject in frame. For this photo, what I'm going to be doing is having my son ride the roller coaster down and into my frame. Because he's not going to be in the frame whenever I first take the photo, what I actually need to do is I need to have my lens set on manual focus. I'm going to set it on manual focus because I need to be able to focus on it whenever he's right here. So the easiest way to do this is to actually have your subject in the frame first, or at least something that could act as a subject. Zach, come on and bring the roller coaster car down, please. Come on down. Ah! Okay. All right. So now that he's in frame, no, just face that way, baby. Really good. And this is where you're going to have to talk to your subject.
Okay.
So
what's the subject?
just wait, buddy. Okay, so I need to position my camera so that he is in frame. So just stay right there, bud. Yep, you look great. Now, you need to make sure that your camera is on a steady surface. If you don't have a tripod, then any flat table will work as long as it's a sturdy table and it doesn't rock. But to support your lens, I would recommend getting a rag or a towel and putting it underneath of the lens. So that way you're not creating any type of pressure between the lens and the body of the camera. So, bud, just stay right there for me, perfectly still. Okay, don't move, and then get your focus. All right, make sure you have all of them in the frame. So we're great. Okay, good. All right, now we are ready for him to move for real and for us to take the photo. Okay, so go ahead and take your car back up to the top of the roller coaster ramp.
Active. Beep, beep, beep.
Okay, on the count of 3, I want you to go, okay? Now you're just gonna have to be ready with your finger on the shutter for whenever they move into your frame. I actually already have my finger halfway pressed down, and since I'm in manual focus, that's not doing anything other than getting me just slightly quicker to take the photo. You ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3, go, go, go! Okay, so I will include this photo in the video, but I can perfectly see the motion blur of him going across the carpet while everything else is clear, and that's what we want in the photo. For the second image, you need your shutter speed at 1/200. So you're just going to repeat the same process that you did for the 1/15 image. So again, set your shutter speed, and this time it needs to be 1/200. So do that, and then you're going to need to adjust your ISO also, because you can't leave your ISO at 200 and expect the same exposure. unless you're outside and maybe the sun is going behind clouds and coming back out. But in this case, my lighting is constant. So I know right now if I take a photo at 1/200 for shutter speed and ISO 200, that photo is going to be pretty dark. So I need to increase my ISO. So I'm going to increase it, and you have to increase it to whatever makes the best photo in terms of exposure for your lighting environment. So your ISO isn't going to be the same as what mine is now. But basically what I'm telling you is to take test photos, like I'm doing right now, to see what your exposure should be. So in this lighting setup, and I have 4 or 5 lights around this room, and it's a big room, but I do have a bunch of lights set up, and my shutter speed at 1/200, my ISO has to be all the way up to 1600. Now that is going to introduce some grain or noise, but it's not going to be so noticeable that whenever you look at the photo, all you're going to see is, oh, look at all that grain. So I'm not too concerned about it for what I'm trying to do. If I were outside and it was earlier in the day, then I probably wouldn't have this issue. So again, set your shutter speed, take some test photos, and then adjust your ISO accordingly. For the third photo, which is 1/1000, you're going to do the same thing that you did for the first two. Set your shutter speed, so go all the way up to 1/1000. So that's a really fast shutter speed, so that's not going to allow for a lot of light in your photo. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and bump the ISO up as high it'll go, which in this case is 6400. So that's pretty high, and that's probably going to be a lot of grain, but it just depends on your lighting environment. It's probably better to do these outside during the day, but it was really cold today, and I didn't get a chance to go out and do that. So you want to try and really think about what your lighting situation is before you do these. So I'm going to do 1/1000, 6400, and it's actually pretty good for what I need it to be. So again, those test shots are just to determine exposure. I'm not worried about framing. I'm not even worrying about a subject moving right now. All I need to do is make sure that I have the exposure good before I even worry about focusing on a subject or framing that subject.